It's 10 o'clock. This is Sky News at 10. Our top story: fearing a not so cordial welcome for King Charles. France postpones his first state visit with just 2 days to go. The fire and the fury on the country's streets forced the detestable decision, says President Macron, warning the visit would lack common sense. Also tonight, the victims of Yemen's forgotten war, the more than 11 million children needing humanitarian aid. Taking the oath, the Hollywood star Gwyneth Paltrow defending herself over claims that she was responsible for a skiing accident.
I didn't engage in risky behavior. I wouldn't with my children there or without my children there.
A resident put on Facebook comments and news and views about how disgusting and disgraceful this flight tip is.
Higher bills, lower standards. The warning that despite rising council tax, key services are continuing to fail.
We really need to rethink our politics, and our politics is in deep.
On the money, Brian Cox on politics, poverty and bad language as he prepares for his final turn in the hit show Succession. And we'll take a first look at tomorrow's front pages in the press preview from 10:30. Hello there, a very good evening. As Prince of Wales, Charles visited France 34 times, but as King, he's going to have to wait a little longer for his next trip after the country, which was to be his first destination for a state visit, asked him to postpone. It follows the chaos and protests on the streets of Paris, Bordeaux and other cities over President Macron's controversial pension reforms. He today said that it wouldn't be serious to host his guests in the middle of the violence. Well, in a moment, we'll get the take from the British side over the postponement. But first, our correspondent Adele Robinson reports from Paris.
The image Paris wanted to project to a king on his first state visit versus reality on the streets, debris and destruction. The aftermath of some of the worst violence seen for years across France. Unrest over pension reform forced the president to cancel the royal visit amid condemnation on both sides over protester attacks and police violence, with similar scenes in Bordeaux.
Nous ne serions pas sérieux et nous manquerions d'un certain bon sens à proposer à Sa Majesté le roi et à la reine consort de venir faire une visite d'État au milieu des manifestations. Et donc, comme nous avons beaucoup d'amitié, de respect et d'estime pour Sa Majesté le roi et la reine consort et pour le peuple britannique.
The King's first state visit here to France was to be symbolic, honouring historical ties between the two countries. But Macron's decision to push through plans to raise the retirement age to 64 without a vote has transformed the streets of Paris into scenes of chaos.
A city known for its elegance and grandeur. And now look at this. Charred rubbish, broken glass and damage on the streets of Paris. It jars with the very idea of a state visit full of pomp and ceremony. And it would have only reinforced the image of a leader described as dangerously out of touch.
Parisians welcomed the decision to cancel the royal visit, but said the country's problems remain.
Yes, it was a good idea to postpone the visit because we shouldn't be showing these dramatic views of France, and in particular Paris right now.
The President has other matters he needs to deal with at the moment. The King's visit changes nothing for us.
This won't change our situation. Maybe he thinks it's respectful or even that it was a bad idea, but actually he's more concerned about the King's security than ours.
But so far, no sign the unrest will stop, and nothing meaningful to help clear up the political mess left behind. Adele Robinson, Sky News, Paris.
The King's visit before his coronation represented an important part of British soft power, one former ambassador to France told us today. Charles and Queen Consort will now make Germany their first official foreign destination, as our royal correspondent Laura Bundock reports.
The Entente Cordiale isn't foreign territory for the King. He's visited France 34 times. But this was his moment as monarch, his first overseas state visit. Now on hold with revolution in the air.
I think the King will be disappointed. It's a trip that we know he was looking forward to and that had been many months in the planning. And it was going to be a first opportunity for us to see him as monarch on an overseas visit. And these visits are really important, not just for the monarchy, but for the country as a whole.
The state visit was billed as a celebration of the Anglo-French friendship, a diplomatic way of reaffirming relations after years of Brexit-fuelled friction. France may be a republic, but there was huge respect for the late Queen, a famed Francophile and Francophone.
I think the King will have the same effect as the Queen of really triggering a sense of affection and emotion in France when the circumstances are right. It is a very important part of British soft power, and that's why we need to use it in the right circumstances.
Et de ma solidarité envers les peuples français.
But this trip deemed simply too risky. Its last-minute postponement, embarrassing for the president and disappointing for the King.
Of course, safety and security are always the priority, but this is a big blow for Buckingham Palace. Just 2 days before takeoff, and this carefully planned, meticulously timed trip has been called off.
The King and Queen consort are still visiting Germany, taking in both Berlin and Hamburg next week. But no France for now. The next time the King meets Macron will be at his coronation. Laura Bundock, Sky News at Buckingham Palace.
The people of Yemen are in desperate need of food aid. Not enough is being provided by the international community, but some of that, Sky News has found, is being sold rather than handed out in street markets. The need is clear. In Yemen, one child dies every 10 minutes from a preventable cause, where years of war have left more than 11 million children in need of humanitarian assistance, with 2.2 million children suffering from acute malnutrition and more than 540,000 under the age of 5 facing life-threatening severe acute malnutrition. Meanwhile, 2.3 million children remain in displacement camps with inadequate access to basic health, nutrition and washing facilities. Our specialist correspondent Alex Crawford reports now from Western Yemen, and a warning: her report contains images of malnourished children from the start.
This is an image which should shame. She's the face of hunger in Yemen's forgotten war. Her name is Ahad, and she's 3 years old, but weighs less than an average newborn. She is slowly starving to death, and the medics in this remote basic clinic can't seem to save her. Whatever food we give her, her father says, she keeps throwing it up. She can't keep it down. Her father's brought her in for more checks. Ahad also has Down syndrome, which the medics here have rarely seen before. The checks confirm what's painfully obvious. Ahad is raising red flags with every measurement. But the nearest hospital is around 60 kilometers away, and it'll cost $16 for transport, way beyond their means. She won't be going. And there are tens of thousands of children like Ahad in Yemen, also starving and poor. Yemen's 8-year-long war has caused millions to flee their homes to camps like Al-Jasher on the west coast. It's one of the biggest, with nearly 9,000 people all living here from hand to mouth, where everyone seems to be hungry. Within seconds of arriving, we were surrounded by people begging for food and help. We don't even have a morsel, not a bit of rice to eat, he says. We have nothing. We are suffocating here. We are dying. The camp is a dusty, sprawling community where the war is never far away, and where the arrival of a new baby means just another mouth to feed in the midst of a conflict which has left them homeless. There is war all around us, she says. It's really scary, and it's raining bullets. So how can we go home? Where can we go? Our presence here has attracted a big crowd from the camp.
They keep telling us that they want aid, and there's a lot of people pushing and shoving. We keep telling them we're not an aid agency, we're just journalists, but they're not listening.
Yemen's enduring one of the world's worst humanitarian disasters, and these are the people who are trying to survive it. The Khoja market nearby is packed with people trying to find a way to eat, and we find evidence of shopkeepers selling food aid.
This is quite clearly World Food Programme, it says on it, and also not for sale.
He says it was the cheapest he could find. He agrees to lead us to the store he bought it from, but says there are plenty more selling food aid. The shopkeeper seems very camera shy at first.
Have you got any other World Food Programme aid here?
He initially denies he's got any more food aid he's selling in the store. No, not here, he says, and then tries to hide a WFP packet in front of him. But with our camera rolling, he realises it's a tough claim to pull off and finally hands the food packet to me. Remember, this food is donated free and meant for the most needy.
Yeah, World Food Programme again. He's got a whole load of those. Excuse out the way, please. Look at them all under there. There's a whole pile of them underneath the counter. All from World Food Programme. How much are you selling these for, sir?
He's making 700 rials, or 70 cents a packet.
700. Do you know this is not meant to be sold?
Yes, he nods. He knows he's not meant to be selling donated goods.
Why are you selling it then?
He's worried now and says he's going to stop selling food aid from today. But looking around his store, it's packed with sacks of rice and flour, which have also come from international donors. But he insists he's providing a service. People sell their food aid out of desperation, he says. For example, if someone wants to buy medicine, they sell the aid to me so they can afford the medicine. It's in an emergency. But the small baby clinic in Khoja, run mostly by volunteers, is packed with babies and mothers who urgently need food they cannot afford. 7-month-old Sarah is the youngest of 7. All of them are hungry, but the baby is suffering most. The doctor fears the worst if she isn't taken to hospital. There'll be complications if she doesn't go, he says, and if there are complications, she'll die for sure. The doctors say Sarah needs urgent help, but her mother can't afford the fare to the hospital, so won't go. Urgent doesn't come in rials or dollars, and Fatima has 6 other children to feed. These are choices no mother wants to make. Sarah's fate now seems horribly sealed. She's another young victim in Yemen's man-made humanitarian catastrophe. Alex Crawford, Sky News, Yemen.
Our special correspondent on the ongoing war in Yemen. Now, the Hollywood star Gwyneth Paltrow has been telling a court a skier who claims she crashed into him, leaving him concussed and with broken ribs, actually crashed into her. She said she hadn't engaged in risky behaviour. Sky's US correspondent Martha Kellner reports.
You may call your next witness.
Thank you, Your Honour. We'd like to call Gwyneth Paltrow.
It's been a 7-year legal battle. Now it was time for Gwyneth Paltrow's day in court.
Do you swear that the testimony you are about to give in the case now before the court will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Thank you.
She was called unusually by the lawyers representing a man who says her reckless skiing left him with a life-altering brain injury.
Did you know the rules at the time of the collision, that if you're in a collision with someone, you need to give your name and information, contact information?
Because I was hit by Mr. Sanderson and he was at fault, I assumed that Eric, who was our ski instructor who was there at the time, who was overseeing the event, he said, I'm going to leave all of your information. And he said, you should go ski down because my kids were waiting for me.
Terry Sanderson, a retired optometrist, listened in court. He has a very different version of events. He says Paltrow, who was on a family ski holiday, ploughed into him from behind, in his words, like Godzilla. He sustained 4 broken ribs and concussion.
I was skiing and 2 skis came between my skis, forcing my legs apart, and then there was a body pressing against me, and there was a very strange grunting noise. So my brain was trying to make sense of what was happening. I thought, is this a practical joke?
Sanderson's lawyers claim that Academy Award winner Gwyneth Paltrow was distracted by her children who she was skiing with.
My daughter was down the hill. My son was to my left, so I was skiing. My eyes were not fixated only on my son when Mr. Sanderson skied directly into my back.
Paltrow will continue to testify on Monday. Her husband, Brad Falchuk, and children, Apple and Moses, are also listed as witnesses. The trial continues.
Well, as you can see, lawyers there having a conversation with the judge. There have been a number of pauses in Gwyneth Paltrow's evidence. And Gwyneth Paltrow, Martha, has been questioned about the case against her.
Yeah, she certainly has. Just to say, first of all, there have been legal wranglings throughout Gwyneth Paltrow's testimony about what and what isn't admissible, and that's because this is a jury trial. So at points the jury have been told to wipe certain parts of testimony from their memory. But certainly it's been an assured performance from Gwyneth Paltrow. She's obviously no stranger to the spotlight, but this is a very different scenario, and she and Terry Sanderson, the plaintiff in this case, have very different versions of events. She says that Terry Sanderson skied into her back. Terry Sanderson, and in fact the only eyewitness who's emerged in this case, say that she skied into the back of him. He says, in his words, it was like Godzilla came from behind and hit him. And in fact, an eyewitness to the event said that he was face down in the snow for minutes after this incident as Gwyneth Paltrow skied away. We've also heard emotional testimony from two daughters of Terry Sanderson who said their father had changed dramatically in the months and years after this ski accident. They said he'd become angry and distant, a different personality than he was before, but Gwyneth Paltrow maintaining that is no fault of hers.
Martha, many thanks, and do scan that QR code that you can see there if you want to watch Gwyneth Paltrow continue to give evidence in court. Back here, the schools regulator, Ofsted, will not stop its inspections, it said today, as it wouldn't be in the best interests of children. Head teachers we spoke to talked about the fear many feel about the inspections, for which they get almost no warning and which can define their school for many years. It follows the death of Ruth Perry, a head who took her own life while waiting for a report which would downgrade her school to inadequate. Sky's Becky Johnson reports.
Who can tell me, what reading fluency skill are we looking at today?
Here at Catesgrove Primary School in Reading, they're due an Ofsted inspection.
It's absolutely agonising waiting for the call. It's stomach churning.
The head teacher will only find out inspectors are coming the day before.
Sunday night I don't sleep. I start to get that anxiety, that anxious feeling in my tummy. Monday I come to work and every time the phone rings I jump, or if I'm out of the office or I'm with children, somebody comes to find me, I instantly think Ofsted. We're just on tenterhooks all of the time.
It's the kind of pressure head teachers say Ruth Perry was under. She killed herself after her school was downgraded, prompting calls to pause inspections. But Ofsted say that won't happen, as they don't believe it would be in children's best interests. Head teachers say they're not opposed to inspections, but they want the system reformed. They say the current system leads to a single high-stakes judgment, where after just 2 days of inspection, schools are labelled either outstanding, good, requires improvement, or inadequate. Data shows almost 3/4 of schools in England were rated good after their most recent inspection, with just 12% given the 2 lowest ratings. But teachers say the top marks are becoming increasingly difficult to achieve and don't think it's fair the entire performance of a school is reduced to a single word. Ofsted argue the current system is simple and accessible.
If the grades are replaced and the overall effectiveness grade is replaced, as is being suggested, then what replaces it has to give parents a good idea of the sort of place they want to send their children.
But her teachers say something has to change.
Your entire school judgment for the next 5 years on a piece of paper can be reliant on that one thing.
Sophie Greenaway worked with Ruth Perry for years and is devastated for her family.
They've lost their mum, they've lost their wife, and us speaking out now can't bring her back, but she has to not have died for no reason.
She feels there must be a better way of assessing schools. Becky Johnson, Sky News, Reading.
Shares in Germany's biggest bank fell by more than 8.5% today as concerns over the health of the global financial sector continue. The fall in Deutsche Bank's value followed the collapse of two banks in the US and the rushed takeover of Swiss giant Credit Suisse by its rival UBS last weekend. The Prime Minister has expressed concern over growing tensions in the West Bank following a meeting with his Israeli counterpart in Downing Street. Shouts from protesters could be heard as Rishi Sunak and Benjamin Netanyahu shook hands. And Plymouth City Council has lost its High Court bid to overturn an injunction banning it from felling trees on a site in the city centre. The injunction was brought by campaigners after 110 trees were chopped down as part of a regeneration project in the city centre. The leader of Plymouth City Council has said he will step down over the controversy. Now, over the past few days, millions of us will have had our annual council tax bills land on the doormat, and for most, it will mean higher payments for the new year. Councils, though, are finding it hard to fund the full range of services, with 62 pence in every pound now spent on social care. Tom Cheshire from our Data and Forensics team has been looking at the funding figures and the impact cuts are having on local communities.
So this happened just last night?
Yes, about 10 o'clock last night, a local resident put on Facebook, Congleton News and Views, about how disgusting and disgraceful this fly tip is.
The fabric of our society is made up of many threads, along with, it seems, carpets and laundry baskets. Fly tipping here in Congleton, East Cheshire, is a very small strand. But tug at those threads year after year, and it adds up to the sense that the social fabric, the deal between citizens and state, is fraying.
Well, obviously, as you can see here, we've got beautiful countryside, and it's a real eyesore. So as well as the financial cost of cleaning it all up, we are seeing our area being blighted.
Tempers are fraying too. This driver stopped next to us to complain.
You never used to get it like they've ruined the top of this road.
Yeah.
Absolutely ruined.
Or it's other problems like potholes. This road is on a school route and has been like this for 5 years. And Sky News analysis of council spending confirms that sense of decline in the everyday activities of councils. Spending on roads has dropped from nearly £1 billion across all councils 10 years ago to around £700 million today. Streetlights have lost £100 million in funding. And that's because councils are spending more money on social care, which they have a legal duty to provide, unlike roads and street lighting. It's gone from £26 billion 10 years ago to £30 billion today, even after adjusting for inflation.
These are all my Atari Jaguar games.
Cheshire East Council spends 64.5% of its budget on social care, on places like this and on people like David Ryder.
There you go, Star Wars.
David's 57 years old, lives in full-time care in Congleton and is a massive fan of 80s new wave music.
What do you reckon? Good sound.
The highlight of his month is a disco for disabled people, run by volunteers. Other community activities have been cut by the council.
Do you feel like there's less services from the government to help you?
It's about time the government did pull its weight in mental health and also physical health. Yeah.
I think even previous to you being with us, there was a lot more things funded for you to do, wasn't there?
Yeah.
And I think we've definitely seen that cut back.
Cheshire East Council told us it was facing unprecedented financial pressure. Like councils across the country, demand for social care is rising, so cuts have to be made elsewhere. Pulling at those threads yet again. Tom Cheshire, Sky News, Congleton, East Cheshire.
Now, one of Britain's finest actors is about to sign off in one of the world's finest TV shows. Brian Cox plays the foul-mouthed billionaire father from a family of media magnates in the multi-award-winning series Succession. Far from his screen role, he told us he's a socialist, and the show is about the horrific wealth gap, as our arts and entertainment correspondent Katie Spencer reports.
If anyone could intimidate the stock markets into shape, arguably it's TV's Logan Roy. As Succession's leading man, Brian Cox says goodbye to the megalomaniac millionaire media mogul we love to hate.
He's on the floor, Tom.
Explain to me what he's doing.
He's moseying, terrifyingly moseying. It's like if Santa Claus was a hitman.
All the backstabbing and double-dealing of the Waystar family empire is about to climax in the fourth and final series, the perhaps ultimate social commentary on capitalism.
So I think we really need to rethink our politics. And our politics is in deep really, and has been seen to be in deep for the last 12 years. That's the point of doing the show. It's a great social satire. It's about the horrific wealth gap. We don't see very many poor people in Succession. They're ignored. And it's a question that you should ask yourself, why are they ignored? Because those people are not interested in what's going on in the lower strata of life.
But the politics truly close to the Scottish actor is that of the SNP, the departure of First Minister Nicola Sturgeon on his mind at the moment.
We mustn't give up the pursuit of independence. We can't separate ourselves off. We are part of these British Isles, but we should no longer be a united kingdom. We should be a united federation. We should be separate, autonomous states.
One thing that has united Cox with Succession fans is an apparent appreciation for Logan Roy's sweary slams.
They come up and they say, can I take a photo of you telling me? And you go, now that's the easiest thing in the world for me to say, because I really do want.
Brace yourself for the finale of arguably the finest television show of the decade and the big reveal of who's finally left standing at the end. Katie Spencer, Sky News.
Can't wait to watch that. My money's on Cousin Greg. And that was Sky News at 10. Coming up, we'll take a first look at tomorrow's papers in press preview, including this story. It's on the front of the Telegraph, which says the UK reset with the EU is in disarray as the King's visit to France is cancelled. And tonight, I'll be joined by Rachel Cunliffe, who is Senior Associate Editor at The New Statesman and former Conservative Special Advisor Anita Boateng, speaking to them in a couple of minutes. Do join us.